Slate today,
Slate tomorrow. Next phase. Next is now.
உங்க டாய்லெட் கிளீனர் பைசன் டாய்லெட் கிளீனர் குவாலிட்டியை விட பெட்டர்னு நிரூபிச்சா உங்க மொத்த பணமும் ரீஃபண்ட்.
இப்போது 79 ரூபாயில்.
ஆஹா, no compromise. உங்க சைடுலயும் எங்க சைடுலயும்.
GT Holidays, South India's #1 travel brand.
The 24-hour series is heading for entirely new territory this weekend with a brand new event here in the Sepang International Circuit, a first ever 12 hours of Malaysia. The race itself to take place tomorrow, but a grid to be set over the next hour or so. And remember that the qualifying format for recent years has seen 3 separate segments, each of 15 minutes. We will get to that very shortly, but this is actually the first of the Middle East trophy races as well. One of them in 2025, the other 2 in 2026, i.e. the second weekend of January for the 6 hours of Abu Dhabi, and the weekend after that, actually a weekend later than normal, the 24 hours of Dubai, meaning that actually the start to the 2026 motorsport season is incredibly busy as well, once you factor in the 24 hours of Daytona too. We'll gather our team in just a moment. My name's Johnny Palmer, overlooking a fabulous start and finish straight here at the Petronas Sepang International Circuit. And it's a lovely warm afternoon as well, at 21 degrees Celsius air temperature. I think actually slightly more than that, as the temp has been increasing. It's 31 degrees Celsius, and certainly very, very toasty down in pit lane, but pleasant with a breeze here and there. Huge grandstand. You've got the tower at the end of the lap as well, with that umbrella factor. Many of you, I'm sure, will have good memories of Grand Prix around here, the last one of those being won by a certain Max Verstappen in 2017. It's Peter Mackay and Bruce Jones in our commentary booth for this qualifying session, and we will get to our pit lane reporter, a man you will know fairly well, shortly too. But gentlemen, I mean, the first ever visit to the Far East for the 24-hour series. Bruce, I know you've been here several times before, but it's great to be stretching our legs a little bit more.
100%. This is actually one of my favourite circuits in the world. I must have been here 10, maybe a dozen times, but it's got flow to it. It's got places you can overtake, and also places where you can mount an attack over the course of about 3 corners. I'm thinking from turns 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you don't get it right, there's still a chance at the next corner. And I think for the drivers who've been with the 24H series for a long time, I mean, it's fantastic to be going back to Dubai and going to Abu Dhabi. This is something different, something new. And I think, again, we're getting more and more people coming from further east in Asia to play as well, so really good.
It's a pleasure to come to Malaysia for racing. I came here 10 years ago in a completely different guise, and it's just the most vibrant country. If you've never been here, come, because it's just fantastic. And I echo Bruce's points about the circuit. This is a circuit that's relatively modern, in, you know, when you compare it to some of the historic tracks in Europe, designed by Herman Tilke, and I agreed with you, Bruce. I think it's his best work. Of all the circuits Herman Tilke's designed, this is, I think, the best one.
And certainly if I had a GT3 car in my garage, which, by the way, I don't, this is the place I'd like to really come and stretch its legs. I just think for a lot of people, you sort of hope a championship you're playing in will go to your favoured circuits, and I think this is definitely another colour on the palette, if you will, for the 24H series.
There's a lot of overtaking opportunity around here. There's also quite a bit more gradient change than I realised. I haven't walked the track itself, but you and I, PMAC, headed out to the karting circuit earlier this morning, and there, you know, the interior roads, the exterior roads are up and down nature, but clearly track limits are going to be closely policed, and I note that they tend to be in the overtaking area. So good one going into the Pankor Laut chicane, which is that sort of shell-like right-hander that gets tighter and tighter and then pings you out through the left-hander turn 2. Langkawi curve, which is turn 4, the downhill approach to that. And then you've got uphill approach. See, I'm still learning this track very much. Tiaman corner at turn 9, and then obviously the hairpin, where if you're staying on for another lap, it's a tightish left-hand hairpin, but then the pit lane entry road is very interesting because the speed limit doesn't kick in until a little way around the left-hander, so you shoot off a 90-degree angle from turn 15 into the pit lane. It's very busy, 15 corners around here.
It's a wonderful piece of racetrack. I mean, the MotoGP have come here for many, many years, still do it since 1999. They've been coming here, and they do a lot of testing in this part of the world, because in the winter, I mean, right now in Europe, it's pretty miserable and cold, really, whatever end of Europe you go to. That's why we come to this part of the world, to enjoy the lovely weather, the heat, and to go racing like we would in the summer in Europe.
Yeah, and also the culture is fantastic here as well. It's very, very strong, and the fans, when they come, are really passionate. Even today in qualifying, we've got many hundreds sitting opposite, we would guess, where Ajith Kumar, the film star, is coming to play. And Ajith's got a packed winter of racing ahead of him as he sort of stretches his legs. But for a lot of people, it's coming here, and already the first cars starting to go across the start-finish line at full charging speed down towards that wonderful first. Well, it's a 3-corner complex. You turn into 1, into 2, and you're dropping into 3. You go sharp right, left.
Yeah. This session is, strictly speaking, AM only. The only exceptions within that is that we've got at least one team who are semi-pro throughout, and that is the number 921 Mulna Motorsport car. So they can use any one of their semi-pros within the session. Otherwise, it's AMs or AM pluses. Ayrton Redont in number 93. PMAX drawing my attention to him. No, he's okay.
No, that shouldn't be, because that's Ajith Kumar's car.
Yes.
Ajith Redant Racing. they need to put the AM in at this point, so
But
that should be.
He is an Ayrton Redon is an AM plus.
He's semi-pro, isn't he?
Not Ayrton, the other Redon, Yannick.
Has he been
one's AM.
recategorised?
Ayrton
He's been
Redon's
recategorised.
AM plus. So AM plus is fine in this session. AM is okay, and you can even put a semi-pro in if all of your drivers are semi-pros. But it's going to be an interesting decision that way. Another crew who have a full choice of their complement are the 69 Continental Racing by Simpson Motorsport Audi R8, because again, any one of their 4 drivers eligible for this first session. Now, the ideal is that you do all 3, because if you only do 2 or 1 of these sessions, you're going to be much further back on the grid, and it's then an average lap time of your ideally 3 drivers. Even though some crews have turned up with 4, we initially had 5 drivers in one car, but that's now been knocked back to 4. The all-Chinese lineup for the treble 6 crew for 610 Racing. But yeah, so there's going to be 1 or 2 cars where one of their drivers will not be utilised in qualifying, and that might be a tough decision to be done as well. But they'll have plenty of chance to do many hours of driving tomorrow.
Spoof, I reckon, was how they sorted out. If you had one driver too many. But right, just to reiterate, 3 15-minute qualifying sessions, a 5-minute gap in between. You have to you can only use a set of tyres in one of those qualifying sessions. You can't move it on to another, as far as I recall.
That's right.
But it's basically quick fire is the point here. And of course, track limits. If you exceed track limits in your qualifying lap, it gets taken away, and that is a big time failure.
Yeah, the tyre regulation has changed for the Middle East season for 2025-2026, where it used to be that you started the qualifying sessions with the same tyre and you had to use that same set all the way through. Now you get a brand new set at each. You have to use a brand new set at each of the 50-minute sessions, but you must also have to use those in the race, and that opens a little strategical element for tomorrow's race for the 12 Hours of Malaysia, because you've got to use up those tyres that have had their peak taken away.
Yep.
Because we've seen it since the Michelin tyre came in. It's a fantastic tyre. The lap times have tumbled ever since it was introduced at Dubai earlier in the year, but it seems to have a 3, 4, 5 if you're lucky lap peak.
The other thing is fuel, because you're not allowed any fuel from the start of the session. If you're in the fuel queue, and actually we should talk about fuel, because live hot fueling is not done in the pit lane where you would normally expect it to be done outside the garages. There is a separate fueling area. This is very typically Creventic and the 24-hour series. Sometimes it's at pit in. This weekend and it's at pit out. So you would do your normal stop in the race, for instance, change tyres, change driver. Then the next job for the incoming driver is to get fuel, and that's to head down towards the quadrant. And that is a speed limit of 20 kph. So it's Johnny Palmer and Bruce Jones and Peter Mackay in the commentary box as we're nearly 7 minutes into this session. Our 4th voice for this segment is the pit lane reporter that we have this weekend, John Hydoff. Good afternoon, John.
Winter tan here, because you are not going to be seeing the number 69 Simpson Motorsport Audi. The glorious V10 will not be firing up. They had a bit of a gearbox issue earlier on round the back, and they've changed that, so they're taking this time that the replacement of the gearbox has gone smoothly. It's a long race, and track position ultimately isn't greatly important. They are losing a little bit of running time, but they've worked out that they can catch that up if they need to. One of the things also, actually, if I can get up my cameraman just to come round this way a little bit, you talked about those new tyre regulations. One of the other things is that tyre blankets are now banned. So what the guys are doing are laying the tyres out in the sunshine to get some of the natural tyre warming constituents of sunshine onto the Michelins. We are with Michelin Pilot Sport. It's the Cup GT H2s again for this season, and Each of these sets of tyres that are used in these 15-minute qualifying sessions must then be reused in the race, and you guys will be able to track that, as can everybody else online, by the number of laps on these tyres, because they've all got an RFID chip in them. All right, I'll have a wander down, see if I can find out any more stories while you start updating us on the times.
Coming through thick and fast. It's a Mercedes AMG 1-2 at the moment, with Dominic Ang fastest for Viper Niza Racing, local team, 205.2.
Yeah, that's the thing. Malaysian team, Dominic Ang, Viper Niza Racing, but he's just by a tiny fraction. We're talking 0.04 of a second. Ahead of two of the Chinese entered crews. That's Mike Zhu and Wei Lu for Origin Motorsport, and before that Climax. But it's Mercedes 1 and 2, and thus far in practice, whenever I looked, it tended to be Porsches at the top of the pile. Early days yet, but they're playing their hand.
Very early days. I think we often see this in the AM session, which is always the first session of the qualifying process. There is a bigger gap between the fastest AM drivers and the less faster ones.
Nicely paused. Yeah.
So
diplomatic.
We'll get an idea, I think, across the three sessions, really, who has got what. I mean, there have been other GT3 series that have come here over the last few years, and there's one series in particular. The last 4 times they've been here over the last 4 years, it's been a Porsche every single time that's been fastest car of the race, as the fastest lap.
Yeah, well, I attended quite a few of those. It was a GT World Challenge Asia events, and let's just mention the R word, shall we now? Rain can often have a fairly major role to play here. Hasn't that? It rained yesterday morning, and it rained the previous morning quite heavily. All the canals around, not canals, drainage channels around here are, brimming at the top at the moment. But when it comes, it will come incredibly heavily, and then it'll burn off. Yeah. How fast the track dries, again, for a lot of people, it might be their first time coming to this circuit. How much they trust, because it can get quite a lot hotter than this. This is actually really clement, I think is the term for the weather conditions for Sepang. But it is a factor. All the teams have to keep their eye out. So for qualifying, we should be fine. But I think in the course of tomorrow's 12 Hours of Malaysia, we do expect rain to come through at some point.
That's the beauty of racing for such a long time, half a day, and the rain, if it does arrive, possibly only going to affect a small segment of the race. However, who's in the car at the time, bearing in mind that the new maximum drive limit per stint for any one driver is 2.5 hours now, so whereas we used to work down 120 minutes and worry about a driver change, you get a little bit more wiggle room in that respect. But some AM drivers might have to do as much as 6 hours driving in tomorrow's race, and will they be in during those dicey stints is the big question mark. 4 minutes to go. John, what else have you got for us?
4 minutes in which we will not see any more of the 909 Red Camel Jordan.NL. There in the pit lane, driver is out of the car. A couple of things I want to point out to you here, gentlemen, is that on the front of the car they have got a bit of gaffer tape on the very front of the luggage cover. I'm not going to say bonnet. We've seen 1 or 2 times with these cup cars that sort of pop up and catch the air and then become an issue. Well, the guys at Red Camel Jordan.NL have decided that they're going to go and fix that even before it's a problem. And also, right in the middle of the bonnet, it's actually next to where the fuel fill is. It's in different places on different cars, but it's always right where the fuel is. There's a sticker that gives the maximum refueling in litres and how much can go in under code 60. For this car, it's 110 litres in green flag, and in full course purple, it's 28 litres. And you were talking about some of the changes, JP and PMAC, to the regulations. There's been another little change in the regulations for fueling under full course purple, as well as how the BOP's been calculated as well, and that's now using a more fuel-based rather than a mechanical difference between the cars.
Just a handful of minutes still to go. It's Dominic Ang's time for Viper Niza Racing in their Mercedes AMG, fastest then, 205.2, from another AMG of Mike Zhou, and the Climax Racing Mercedes number 999 is not that far away in terms of times. They're both in the 205.2, so about half a hundredth of a second, or 500ths of a second, I should say, between those 2 times. Then Origin Motorsports Porsche for Lu Wei in 87. These are all AM drivers or AM Plus drivers. And Antares O in the Absolute Racing Porsche, 4th quickest. I'm concerned about the absence of Herbert Motorsport to this point, though. Should have been either Ralph Bone or Konstantin Dressler in that car. So they are going to have to be further back on the grid if it appears at all. But hearing now from John that the car is in the garage door is down. So it might be that we don't even see them in the next qualifying session and possibly beyond, PMAC.
So that, again, will mean that they will start at the back of the 10-car GT3 grid. But Herbert have got a busy winter here in the Middle East and in Asia overall, because they're competing in the Middle East 24-hour series championship, but also in the Asian Le Mans series. So they could well just be keeping the car safe for tomorrow. There's little to be gained potentially for them. And the thing about Herbert is they're so canny. They are so tactical in everything they do, very deliberate in everything they do. There's nothing they do out of accident. It could be that there's something that they want to change on the car tomorrow and don't want to wear the crew out before what will be a challenge tomorrow. 12 hours endurance racing anywhere is a challenge, but in the heat here at Sepang, that is it is going to be tough on the crew.
Do they just want to keep 3 additional sets of tyres without any wear on them at all, and they're going to compromise any sort of position on the grid, thinking we've got 12 hours to make up that time?
That's a good
point.
Would
think that's probably the direction in which they're travelling.
Really?
Or not travelling, as the case may be. But yeah, again, canny, been there, seen it, done it. But 12 hours and 12 hours here. I thought we might start here with a 6-hour race. But hey, you've got to warm up here. End your 2025 season with the full fat 12 hours. It should be fantastic. And of course, it goes from 10 in the morning to 10 at night. And we will have a temperature swing in that time. It'll be a fairly steep heat gradient in the morning, and then hopefully quite a steep cooling off bit at the end of the evening. But today, John was reporting in the pit lane, by the way, the checkered flag just being waved at the end of that first of 3 qualifying sessions. The breeze is a rather helpful element, I believe.
It's providing a bit of relief, certainly for those working in pit lane itself. But, of course, the temperatures that we have today will be similar tomorrow, so it's going to be a useful reference point as well for how things will pan out in the race, even if we do get a short, sharp, maybe even thunderstorm shower partway through the race. So the checkered flag is out, but many of the cars that were running in that session actually heading to the pit lane quickly in order to do their tyre change, an essential tyre change, remember, in the 5 minutes that sit between qualifying 1 and qualifying 2. And you have to have a different driver going into the cars as well. That will be the case for everybody because we don't have any 2 driver lineups. There is a spin for the Vortex, number 701, being driven by Lionel Amrouche. And he, I think, had already passed the checkered flag as Dominic Ang, then the quickest so far. So the average right up there as well, a 205.231. And Dominic, a local guy, as in Malaysia-based, I think, now with John Hindhaugh.
Yeah, we've decided just to step into the shade of the Viper Nisa garage. Dominic, congratulations, fastest time there. We're in the heat of the day. First of all, obvious question, but we have to ask it because this is the first chance we've had. What was the track like? What was the conditions like out there?
Well, compared to this morning, it's definitely more hotter now. So the car is really studying a lot more compared to the morning. So I think the track condition, the track time is much higher now, about 10+ degrees more. So definitely much harder to drive now. The drivers got to manage the tyres. Especially these tyres only give you that 1 lap, so you got to really manage it well.
But for the first time in prevented competition, you're putting a new set of tyres on now for your teammates. So you don't have to make these tyres last 3 qualifying. Is the temptation to just keep driving and driving and driving?
Yeah, so I think on the tyres on this track, you got to change a new one because the drop-off is too big. Unlike when we did in Europe this year, we could do 3 drivers, the time was still good, but I think the temperature is just too hot there.
But you will have to use all 3 of these sets of tyres in the race. Is that part of the thinking of not pushing too hard? Because these tyres might have to do nearly an hour in the race.
Yeah, so in an hour, it's going to be a big struggle to manage the tyres. So I think in the race, not about the fastest lap time, it's about how you manage one stint of the time. Yeah, it'll be quite tricky. Yeah.
Congratulations. At the moment, you've got provisional pole, but your two teammates have got to back you up on that. Yeah. Do you cheer them on? Do you put the headset on? What advice were you giving your teammate when he got into the car?
Well, I just told him about the condition of the track, how it was a bit different from this morning. So, yeah, just lay a haze up for him. So maybe he can drive a bit more smoother compared to me. I was sliding a bit too much, so find a bit more time, yeah.
And who's in the car now?
Melvin's in the car now.
Okay, great. Congrats again. Yeah, thank you. Go and get yourself rehydrated. Good to see you. Dominic Yang, fastest in that first 15 minutes. Guys, interesting, isn't it, to hear what he says, that even over that 15 minutes, having to perhaps manage those Michelin tyres, which will have to come back and make an appearance in the race tomorrow.
Well, Dominic did 5 laps there, so that's well over 10 minutes of running in qualifying. So it really fascinating that he mentioned one fast lap. That's all you get. That's the peak of the tyre. So it is a very peaky tyre. But another thing that stood out to me there was, it was a great interview, was how hard it's going to be to manage the tyre over 1 hour.
Yes.
So it's, and we have a tyre regulation here where up to 50 minutes under green, you can you can fit tyres whenever you want. But if, say, a code 60 came out within the 50 minutes that the tyres have been on the car, you can't change them under code 60. So you have to, you know, the idea being that you can't just throw new tyres on at every code 60, because most of the teams are coming in under the code 60.
Let's get to John again before we start Q2, then we can get a thought from Bruce as well. Here's John.
Right, I've walked all the way down towards pit out, but pit out is also right alongside the fuel fill. We're not taking people out of the pit lane here to fill as we normally would do down at the far end towards pit out, but it isn't effectively part of the pit lane. What do I mean by that? Because I've kind of confused myself saying that. 40 kilometres an hour in the outside, the fast lane, the left-hand side of the pit lane, which is where all the cars are queuing by that red light at the end of the pit lane and the red flag. If you pull to the right to take the fuel, and there are 8 fuel hoses there from those smart pumps, and Johnny can explain about that, it's 20 kilometres an hour. No overtaking in there either. So you basically, if there's a queue, you're going to have to just sit there. There's the green light at the end of the pit lane. The Asbest Cupra just going past to join in. The only TCE, TCR car out there. And as I said earlier on, JP, some slight changes to particularly the code 60 fuel fill from what we've seen in the past here in Creventic.
Yeah, there's certainly some changes within the rule set from 2025 into this new season. It seems strange that, because we're still in December of 25, but the new Middle East Trophy season begins with this event, the inaugural Michelin 12 Hours of Malaysia, and you certainly have to be on point in terms of the balance of performance for fueling. John mentioned about the smart meters, the fuel pumps, and that is dependent on which class you're in. You have a special key device. It sort of reads which car you have, which class you are in, and then determines the fuel flow and how much you can put into the car at any one point. And that's whether it's under green or code 60. So very clever stuff, whereas in the past it was down to your team members having to dictate it all, and there was mistakes aplenty. Theoretically it's easier now because the electronical system will do it all for you.
Let's say I've been coming to 24H series races for about a dozen years. What always impresses me, there is a constant evolution of the rules, and they really consider things, and how would it work with this, how would it work with that, and then it gets introduced, and if it doesn't work, you know, they will step back and change it again. But I think they're just getting to a sweeter and sweet spot. But if I can go back to a point I wanted to make just before we went to John, we heard that these tyres are very peaky. You get effectively the one good flying lap, but to me, the element I need to understand is how big is the fall down. Does it just come down and then stay really constant? Because it's a thing, if you've got to get your tyres to work for an hour, or whatever, if it carries on falling away at a rapid rate, you're in big trouble. But that's what we need to, so the more drivers we can speak to, they'll be able to sort of pass on the degree of drop-off from the very peak.
Well, that's something we've seen with the Michelin tyre throughout the year, is that when the conditions haven't been as warm anyway as we've got here, there is a drop-off, and then it can stay there for a long time. You know, Dominic Dominic Ang, a local driver here, knows the circuit inside out, and talking a lot about how the track conditions change, how 10 degrees Celsius higher track temperature, and how that's making the car slide more, how it's putting more temperature obviously through the tyres. So that I agree with you, Bruce. That's something the drivers are going to give us great feedback tomorrow down in the pits with John and Ben, having a chat with them and seeing how that tyre is actually behaving, because in the heat of the day it is going to be difficult, I think, to keep the tyre underneath.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the drivers have been saying already, once you get cloud coming over, the air temperature doesn't drop, but actually the amount of heat in the tarmac moves around a whole lot more. And yesterday was relatively cloudy. Today's been pretty much a not 100% blue sky, but probably 90%. It's fantastic if you're not in a racing car. In a racing car, it's going to be a warm environment, but you know, it's a really super place to be coming to race just in the lead up to Christmas. But right, we've got a changeover of drivers, and we're waiting for the first flying laps to come in. The target time to beat, for reference, just to reiterate, was Dominic Ang, Viper Racing Mercedes, 2 minutes 5.231 seconds. And next time around, if the tyres are true to what the drivers are saying, all the drivers out there should be hitting probably their best lap of this qualifying session. This is qualifying session 2 or 3. They're all 15-minute qualifying sessions with just 5 minutes in between. I mean, it seemed just a moment ago the cars are coming in. Good to see the Vortex is going, because it sounds brilliant. That was the car that had a little rotation. No damage done, though, just at the end of that first qualifying session.
Many fans here to see Ajith Racing. Ajith Kumar debuted in the Michelin 24-hour series in Dubai this year, and we were just blown away by the number of fans who came to see him race. He raced in the Porsche Cup 992 class throughout the year, but switching up to the GT3 category with Red Ant Racing from this round onwards. And the white and red Mercedes AMG that they're running, looking absolutely resplendent. It's almost got a little bit of the kind of 90s GT1 look about it. I quite like that. Yep. There's a certain how would I say, tobacco manufacturer has got a bit of that kind of look about it too. But we actually got some of Ajith's fans very kind, that gave us a lift to karting, which was very generous of them.
Well, they shot past us almost the speed that Ajith's probably going to be racing on the track this weekend. And we said, blimey, those guys are in a bit of a hurry. And then all of a sudden they'd stuck it in reverse and were making sure that we had got a lift to wherever we needed to be. And we said, we're heading to the kart track. And these 4 Malaysian guys, Malaysian-based, I said, have you been to see Ajith Kumar race before? No, this is the first time. So they've descended upon this site to see their hero, and they're joining a lot of people as well up in that grandstand. But thank you to those 4 guys who made space for us, and we got to the karting track far faster.
Very good indeed. We'll have a full debrief about the karting later on. Right, already, well, I was looking to see what sort of pace Leo Ye Hong Lee could get through, because I've watched him over the years in Asia. He's very quick. He's put the fastest time so far, 2 minutes 4.222. So he took a second off the best of Dominic Ang, but has not put his car top, because the driver who's taken over from Dominic Ang, another Malaysian racer, Melvin Moe, is also in the 2 minute 4s. So we're working on an aggregate here. We've already added the first session to the first part of the second session. Then, of course, where we see where they end up after 3. But at the moment, on aggregate, it's still Viper Racing. Black and green flashes on their Mercedes AMG, top of the pile.
Balance of performance-wise, we're very, very similar to what we saw at Barcelona at the end of September. So the Barcelona 24 hours was the end of the European season, and the balance of performance is very, very similar, except 2 changes. The Lamborghini Huracan, funnily enough, we didn't actually see any at Barcelona, has been given an ever so slight lift. It's been given an ever so slightly bigger air restrictor, and has been given 5 litres more fuel capacity. But the surprising change, I have to say, is the Audi, which was really, really strong. It was strongest in 2 out of the 3 sectors in the race at Barcelona. And it's actually been given it's got 2 air restrictors, and it's been given two increases of 2 millimeters. Got that there in the end, didn't I? What does that mean in short? More air in the engine, more power. So the Audis could be strong, but although that's not...
It's less restricted.
Less restricted,
yeah,
yes.
Okay.
More air, more power.
I can never work out which way around that is, but if you tell me it's less restricted, then perfect.
It's less restricted.
Understand.
Yeah, so, but what we're seeing in practice, actually, is the Mercedes AMGs are really, really strong, which they were at Barcelona. Of course, they won the race with RAFA Racing. But watch out for the Porsches here as well. It's that package, that 992 GT3R, in other series that have come here over the last few years, seems to work at this track.
First couple of corners for the 65 Mercedes of Viper Racing. Already got a Dominic Ang time in the bank. That was the 2:05.2. And now Melvin Moe. He mentioned Melvin going in as the second driver, down in the 2:04s. So he managed to shave 0.6 of a second off the Dominic Ang time. But you would expect that. However, they're all AMs, aren't they, in that Viper Mercedes? So that's a noticeable improvement. That's fuel burn and fresh tyres, a combination of the two. It might be that Melvin Moe just has a little bit more pace as well.
It could be. I wouldn't necessarily expect that, but I mean, what we heard from Dominic when he got out, he said, I was a bit ragged. I've just got to tell Melvin to be smooth. Maybe Melvin's doing that. But the advantage when we got on aggregate, it's only, I'll do some very quick maths, 0.56 of a second, but now it's changed as I speak because Climax Racing goes to the top. Elias Sepulveda, Finnish racer, puts that one on aggregate to the very top of the charts. His time very close to getting the 2 minutes 3. 2 minutes 4.02 seconds. So Climax Racing top of the pile, but this is only the second of the 3 sessions.
Leo Yehong Lee going very fast though as well in the Origin Motorsport Porsche in GT3, fastest in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2. His best lap time of the second qualifying session so far for him, for the Chinese driver, 2:04.2. He's onto the 4th lap of the tyres, but unfortunately the Vortex is ended up in the kitty litter, so this could throw out a flag with just over 6 minutes left on the clock. Victor Moutinho, and red flag, unfortunately.
So where he's gone off is the exit of turn 14, which is the right-hander that the red flag is now flying, not surprising. It's the right-hander that leads you onto the straight that goes the other side of the main grandstand, that leads you up to turn 15, the final corner. It's a very tricky corner. He's run wide, put the Vortex, the one and only Vortex V8 here this weekend, into the gravel. Well, no real damage done, but sitting in a point where he'd be straight ahead of the other drivers. They turned into turn 14, so the officials right on top of it there.
So that's the very exotically named Sunway Lagoon corner, turn 14. I like that. It's a bit sort of Sebring-esque. You have Sunset Bend there, don't you? Final corner. So this is penultimate corner, turn 14. It's always, I found it really tough on the sims of about 20 years ago, getting my line right through 12, 13, and then 14. Do you hang out wide and then cut across to the apex, or a tighter approach, but that's going to compromise your run down the long Penang straight? So it's a tough sequence of corners, and very easy to get it wrong, as proved by Victor Moutinho.
Sunway Lagoon corner is, for motorbike fans, is the Marquez and Rossi corner of 2015. Anybody who knows MotoGP knows what I'm talking about. The most controversial moment in the last 20 years of MotoGP. Now, you have to feel sorry for Origin Motorsport and Leo Yehong Lee there, because he was on a potentially provisional pole-sitting lap there. He was absolute best in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2, and then the red flag comes out. That's luck of the draw. But the tyre, what did Dominic Ang say? It's got a 1 lap peak. He was on the 4th lap of tyre. So is the Porsche kinder on its tyres than the big front-engine Mercedes?
I would be surprised if that is the case. A lot of people say that Mercedes is, if you're heading into GT3 racing as an AM driver, initially, the Mercedes is very easy to get on with because it gives you plenty of warning if it's going to have a moment, and very rarely snaps anyway. And I thought, therefore, was easier on its tyres, but
not on the fronts, apparently.
Because of the big V8 on the front, which actually sits much further back and towards the driver. However, front tyres, maybe that's an understeer problem then, if you've gone a bit too heavy early on. So, yeah, rotating the Porsches could be easier, and that'll be something to bear in mind when we get to the longer stints.
One thing we should also mention as well, we've had so many different drivers from different disciplines come in to compete in the Creventic Michelin 24-hour series. I remember 2 years ago at Monza, same weekend as Le Mans, Rubens Barrichello came to race in a Porsche Cup car. This weekend, we've got Indy 500 winner Marcus Ericsson, who's racing with his brother Hampus in the Lippert Lamborghini. His best time there, a 2:06.1, although he was improving as well, was Marcus Ericsson, although it's still not quite on the hot pace of the Origin Porsche of Leo Yehong Lee. No,
not at all. I was just waiting to see what he could do. This will be his first ever visit, and experience around here, experience in the heat, but Lamborghini doesn't seem to be quite there, but it's a good lineup with his brother, as you say, Hampus Ericsson, who's a regular Lamborghini racer, normally absolute front runner. In fact, the North American champion this year. So good calibre.
I will say Marcus has done 4 Grand Prix round here, mind you.
Of course he has.
15, 16, 17 and 14. I missed one. So 14, 15, 16, 17 with a variety of teams as well. I think his final year in Formula 1, Sepang was already off the calendar, but yeah, has some single-seater experience. Whilst the red flag is out, the clock has been paused at 6 minutes and 14 seconds. The Vortex having its moment. Might be able to just describe that to you. Oh no, this was its recovery, in fact, and has been towed out of the gravel. And now all that gravel is going to pour over the road on the exit of Sunway Lagoon corner, although it does appear that Victor Martinho is doing a pretty good job of trying to keep that car vaguely off the racing line as much of the gravel pours out of it. But this red flag does provide us an opportunity to head back to the pit lane and to John Hindhoff.
Just doing a bit of polishing here for Herbert Motorsport. That's about all they're going to be doing in this session. If I walk slightly to my left, you'll see that the garage door is down as the cars are heading out to the end of pit lane. Now, this looks bad, but they are not withdrawing. It is an electrical issue, the 2 words that you never want to hear on any car, on any Porsche, and certainly not a race car. The good news is, because it is 16:33 in the afternoon here at Sepang, it's a little before 10 o'clock in the morning back at Porsche Motorsport at Weissach in Germany. The engineers there are up, they're having their breakfast, they're having their coffee, and they're being sent data by the engineers of Herbert right now. They will not be out in qualifying at all, but they're expecting a fix, whether that's a data fix or a piece of hardware they need to fix. That news coming in from Germany within the next hour or so, they hope, because they want to get the car out in the night practice session tonight just to run it down to make sure that everything is okay. The worst thing that can happen is that they will start at the back of the GT3 category. There are 10 cars. They'll start 10th. 10 positions to make up in 12 hours for Herbert Motorsport, with slightly new fuel fill on the code 60s. I asked somebody the other day, right, what do these new fuel fill rules mean? You can take slightly less now under code 60 than before. And one of the other teams said, we haven't worked it out yet. We're just going to do what Herbert was going to do. So that, I think, is a really good tactic. Don't count these guys out. Don't count these guys out of being out tonight, and certainly not for the race, but electrical problems for the moment.
Well, I actually was weaving it into their intended strategy, and I have to say that was a bit of a stretch on my part. I did think it was more likely they had a genuine issue, so thanks, John, for getting to the bottom of that. But it's certainly not the end of the world. I mean, you just got to concentrate on overtaking 1 car per hour, and then by 2 hours to go, you'll be in the lead.
And with a lot of the overtakes they make are in the pit wall rather than on track, as John alluded to there. Strategy-wise, you can do worse than copying Herbert.
Too right.
But we're going to be back running in just around 3 minutes, just under 3 minutes' time. We've already got a queue at the end of pit lane ready to get back into this qualifying session.
Yeah, and they're not heading out for qualifying session 3. We've got 6.25 minutes remaining. Bear in mind, by the time you've done your outlap, we've talked about how good these tyres are. Maybe, has the best gone out of the tyres in all of these? The driver's been talking about how incredibly peaky it is, and if you don't get your first flying lap right, I think for less experienced drivers, they're probably taking more out of the tyres, aren't they? So, it may not be absolutely as critical because they're not going to be on the tyres quite as hard. But 6 minutes 14. But at the moment, we've got Climax Racing with their Mercedes top of the pile on aggregate of the first 1.5 sessions combined. Their margin isn't a huge one. It's 0.3 of a second now ahead of Melvin, Moe and Viper Niso. So it's 2 Mercedes, first and second.
What's surprising me is that the Elias Sepinen and that Climax Racing Mercedes, which sits on aggregate pole position by 0.3 of a second at the moment, you've done a 2:04 flat, actually, and you've put a couple of laps on the tyres. I wonder if there was an argument there to park up effectively and save the tyre, because you know you've got to use it in the race. But Elias Sepinen obviously feels he's got more lap time, and maybe they feel like he's going to need more lap time to make sure they get that pole position.
Yeah, he's got more of a task on his hands, I suppose, because yes, you might be able to find a couple more tenths, but once it's averaged out, you don't get quite as much of an advantage. So he's got to push a little bit harder, but nevertheless, that's a tremendous time. It's the best that we've had across both of the sessions so far, 2:04.0 from the 2:04.2 of Leo Yeh, who is very impressive in the Origin Motorsport Porsche, number 87. Then Absolute and Loïc Hartog. We know all about the young Dutchman who is going from strength to strength in the team from Hong Kong, Absolute Racing. And then Viper Nizza, not topping this particular session, qualifying 2. Melvin Moe's actually 4th fastest behind those names I've already mentioned, but is doing enough on the averages to keep the Viper Nizza car on the front row alongside Climax Racing.
In fact, if I could just touch on Absolute Racing, they've got a base just outside the circuit here when you come in through the main gate. That's an operational centre, and their main base is just, you go through a tunnel out from the infield at the Shanghai International Circuit, and that's their main hub. But they're right across Asia, and you know, Ingo Matter and the guys, hugely enthusiastic supporters of all things GT and single, you know, one-make championships like the Porsche Cup and the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. But yeah, I think there are a lot of logistics if you're racing across Southeast Asia, a lot of distance to cover. So to have a base at as many circuits as you can, it certainly makes things a little easier. Right, 6 minutes remaining in the session. That means it's restarted. 6 minutes flat.
This restarted second qualifying session now with just under 6 minutes to go will give us another little peek behind the curtain in terms of how does the tyre behave now that it's cooled down. Yes, there's been 1 or 2 laps or 3 laps in some cases of wear, but the actual temperature cycle of the tyre, the cars have been sitting there, temperature will have dropped, pressure will have dropped. Will now you get that peak back again? Does the tyre still have it in it or not? That we just don't know, but the drivers are going to tell us if that's the case or not with their actions and their lap times in the next 5.5 minutes.
I mean, that's the thing. If this is the first ever broadcast you ever listened to about racing, you think, why are they talking about the tyres so much? But they are so hypercritical. And the difference between when they're on and when they're off is different from every tyre, every different amount of temperature. And what's happening at the moment, just cloud. It's just starting to cloud over for the first time today, and a little bit of breeze in some of the palm trees around us. So, you know, I don't think we're going to have any rain coming in, but just little changes.
But if there is a bit of cloud cover around certain corners, in Australian motorsport, they talk a great deal about UV on the racetrack directly. I know the ozone layer is possibly a little bit thicker in this part of the world, but nevertheless, direct rays from the sunshine take grip away from the racetrack. So if we can get a bit of cloud cover, either side of a rain shower maybe tomorrow, that's the time when the times might start to tumble within the race.
Is that when they're talking about car speed?
Car speed and UV are at the top of the list. The other thing that has been on many people's lips this weekend is track limits, and actually on the list, out of 14, that is on the list that John Hindhaugh gave me earlier on. I was intrigued that the exit had turned 15 wasn't. That might be self-policing, however, because there's a bit of turf there, which I've already seen the Viper Nizza Mercedes into, and it just slows you down massively. So they don't have to worry, the officials, about track limits necessarily there. It is about keeping just the thinnest bit of Michelin rubber of any tyre the correct side of the white line. So you don't have to worry about keeping all 4 wheels on the racetrack. Just the merest slither of tyre is enough. And through most corners, the curb is counted as the racetrack as well.
Loïc Hartog onto a flying lap now. The 2025 Porsche Cup Award winner for the best independent Porsche racer of the year, €150,000 prize.
Nice.
Ka-ching, well deserved as well. Loïc's been basically in a Porsche in every continent of the world, every major race. He's been a busy boy and he's put the results on, and had a wee chat with him at breakfast this morning, and he very much targeted that Porsche Cup award and made the very most of his season. Great to see him just progressing all the time, and he's a tall driver, 6'5", 6'6", we think.
Yeah.
He looks like Jörg Bergmeister in the car. I love, which is
he does, but I know Jörg is my height and looks a tiny bit taller, so he's about 2 meters 2 or so. But I remember beating him when he was in Benelux Porsche Series 2019. That made him about 17 years old. They had this whole phalanx of really young drivers, but he was the Porsche Cup winner this year, wasn't he? That is such prestigious global awards. What do you have to do to win it?
Points all the time. There's a coefficient. It was a bit like the European Rally Championship in the 80s. There's a coefficient of difficulty for each event, and you get a certain amount of points depending on how good it was. But Look, really pushing hard.
He is
pushing hard, yeah. And
and he's off. And on again.
Well, he's absolute best in Sector 1 and personal best in Sector 2, but has it gone a bit scrappy in Sector 3, though?
Well, it's been a little scrappy here and there anyway, but to be honest, he's still been getting the time. The nose drops to the ground as he hits that middle pedal to go underneath the tower, the umbrella at the end of the lap, and then through turn 15 and across the line. And he's done a 2:03.928, which will blitz the time already set by Elias Seppänen for Climax Racing. That's the quickest of the session so far, a 2:03.9, the only 2:03 so far. Takes Absolute Racing Porsche up to the front row provisionally.
And what I need to clarify, when I said he went off, he kept just enough, I think, of a wheel on the track at turn 14. It's the tight right-hander that leads you onto the straight. There was a kick-up of dust, and he kept going on his way. He clearly didn't want to lift at that point. He was planting the throttle, ready to go. So we're talking really small margins. So up into second place, but it's still quarter of a second on aggregate down on that Climax Racing Mercedes for now.
And lap 5 on the tyre, but albeit with a break in between. And I think that answers our question. The tyre actually will peak again within reason if you cool it back down again. So Luke Hartog, and that last sector, that was not his perfect last sector at all. So there's more than a 2:03.9 in there. I mean, the best GT3 lap time in memory was in 2024 GT World Challenge Asia. Lauren Heinrich in race trim, a 2:02.2, but that could have been in much cooler conditions. And of course, the track temperature makes all the difference for the lap time.
Really does. I mean, what happened to Lauren since then? Oh, he's done well, hasn't he?
Quite well.
Promotion. But at the moment, let's give you a little sequence. Mercedes, Porsche, Mercedes, Porsche, Mercedes, Ferrari. They're the top 6 positions. The Ferrari entered by LM Corsa, looking to see what they can do, but it's still the hometown team, effectively from not too far away. And Shah Alam plays had his own World Sports Car race back in about 1990. But anyhow, local team, top of the charts.
You have to dodge the snakes there.
There are quite a few circuits I've been to around the world where you have to dodge the snakes. Not just the Vipers.
There you go. So it's basically a Stuttgart 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the moment. Mercedes and Porsche all the way through.
Okay, well, the one that actually got into the mix was suddenly car number 26. The Be Quick Absolute Racing Porsche just moved up to 5th in the pile there.
Andy Dung at the wheel for the Be Quick car, and the checkered flag's about to come out, but Andy's going to squeeze one more lap out of this, and those gaps towards the sharp end, not necessarily within the averages, but the individual times in Q2 are starting to condense. That weird feeling of thinking a car's gone off at incredibly high speed at turn 15, but no, it's just a car heading into the pit lane and pinging to its right, our left, as I look towards the very far end there of the Kuala Lumpur straight. So deciding not to take the checkered flag on the racetrack and instead head to pit lane to try and get the tyre change done as early as possible. You've got 5 minutes, but if you can get a bit of a head start on your rivals, bolting a brand new set of Michelin tyres on for Q3, then why not do that?
I'm not trying to give false drama, but I've just heard about 10 kilometres from here, there's a massive rain shower. Storm. Okay. Deluge, call it what you will.
How quickly is it being blown in our direction is the next question. Would it take 15 minutes or less than that to arrive on the scene? Because all of a sudden it might mean that Q2 is where most of the movement is likely to happen. And who of the drivers that remain on the entry list will be the brave souls to be taking the course on qualifying 3. Remember, if you're here with a 3-driver lineup, that sort of decides itself. However, with 4 drivers, there will be a decision process. You don't have to use all your AM talent in qualifying, and many will not do that, of course, with 4 pro drivers, full pro drivers in the entry. But it's interesting that Marcus Ericsson has already been utilised. The other pros are Alessandro Ghiretti, the brand new 2025 Porsche Super Cup champion. We have Robert Renauer. Oh, the vortex is off again. That's the 3rd half spin that we've had. Actually, at the end of, or was it the middle portion of qualifying 1, there was a spin here, but for a different driver. So is the setup on the 701 a little bit iffy just coming out of turn 15, and they might have to iron that out come the race. That's why qualifying running, night practice running of 90 minutes later on is so valuable today. As the rest of the cars head across the line or down the pit lane to see the checkered flag, we've got time to head to John.
Just outside the number 10 Absolute garage with the Porsche, the very dark blue, or mid-metallic blue car. Absolutely lovely colour scheme, you know me, and a blue Porsche. Luke Hartog has just unfolded himself out of that car. The considerably smaller Patrick Niederhauser has jumped in, literally as they were swapping information as they went over. Patrick, even with his helmet on, didn't come up to Luke's chin. Luke's with me now. How was that, Luke? You got a really good time in there. Is this track beginning to come to the Porsche now?
Yeah, it seems so. I mean, at first I wasn't so satisfied, to be honest. I had traffic on my first lap, and with this track having a lot of degradation, I didn't anticipate on improving, but actually we managed to. I was sure it was in there, and happy to get the lap on the board.
We were saying earlier on to a couple of other drivers, it's a different mindset, a different tactic now with a brand new set of tyres for each driver. I presume you've still got to be a little bit careful bringing them in, but the opportunity to get 2, possibly even 3 flying laps out of these Michelins?
True, but on the flip side, it's also a deficit that you have for the race because you have to carry these tires into the race. So it was a gamble, and we were discussing a bit over the radio, but in the end, I hope the gamble is worth it. Patrick's now jumping in the car, so let's see if we can fight for overall pole.
What did you tell Patrick as you went out? There was a moment where the sun went behind a little cloud there, and I thought, oh, this could be interesting, but it's back out again now. You can't teach Patrick anything about driving the car, but what information did you pass on to him?
So we were discussing because it's hard to anticipate the cars on track if it would be smart to go out first, so we're at least having no traffic, or if we were going to wait. So that's basically the discussion we had just before heading into the car. I'm sure he will deliver. I hope he can extract the peak out of the tires. That would be key.
Go and get yourself rehydrated. Thanks very much, Luke Hartog. And you can see the difference in height there from how we've had to pan up to there and back down to here for me. And I'm just about 5'10", so what it's about 190 centimetres, something like that, 189. He says he's under 2 metres. Nah, he's over 2 metres, well over 2 metres.
I love the fact that, look, he's still wearing his fireproof undershirt from Le Mans, the Chip Hart Racing Le Mans livery. I think I love that. Yeah. We had them on at Barcelona as well, I seem to remember. But I love that. Very proud of his Le Mans debut. You only do your debut once, so to speak.
So they say, yeah, that tends to be the way of it. Patrick mentioned many times before is Patrick Niederhauser, and he's another one of the 4 pro drivers here this weekend. Robert Renauer being the 4th. So a lot of talent that you have to kind of read a bit further down in the entry list, and you go, oh wow, Giretti's here. And Marcus Ericsson's here, and a number of others as well. This has drawn, although the car count is, 17 for this weekend, I think there's a toe in the water. Some of the drivers that are here are most impressive.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. And Patrick's had a fantastic season. He won the GT World Challenge Endurance title, Rutronic Racing Porsche. But for me, it always goes, Patrick Niederhauser, Audi. He raced for so many years with Audi, achieved great things. But you know, sometimes across a season, if it's only a championship of 5 rounds, okay, one of them's the Spa 24 hours that pays a few more points, but with fields of 60-plus cars in the GT World Challenge, it's very easy to have a fumble, but they were super consistent, 2nds, 3rds, 4ths, and just kept on scoring. But sharing with Alessio Picariello, a driver who knows this circuit very, very well indeed, and Sven Muller, they were super strong. I was really, really pleased for Patrick. But in the best form of theatre, I think it all came down to the final lap of the last race of the season. One overtake, moved them up to about a 5th position. That was enough. But, you know, it's great when you see someone who's just been exemplary in the way they drive, the way they approach their sport, getting a big reward after years of near misses. So, Patrick, good to have you here.
I'm excited to see what Alessandro Giretti can do here, because Alessandro has proven himself in various different Carrera Cup championships, but Asia in particular, he was really, really strong. I mean, 2024 last year, he won in Asia and in France. This year, he won the overall Porsche Super Cup and Carrera Cup Deutschland, which, if you take the stickers off, you could be watching a Super Cup race. It's a lot of the same teams, a lot of the same drivers, but that's given him the proving ground, if you like. He's been taken on as a Porsche contracted driver, so this is an early step, if you like, into the 992 GT3R, and this is a circuit he knows well from his time racing in Carrera Cup Asia. So he's a really, really promising talent. Still only 23. Let's see what he can do in this qualifying session.
He's in the 26 car that's...
The Be Quick car.
The Be Quick car, yes.
I think he will be.
Indeed. Well, we've already seen Henry Kicks to start with. He was the only driver eligible for the first qualifying session. Then Andy Dung, who was most impressive in his run. So that car now on the averages is 5th fastest. And, well, certainly a position in the front 2 rows possible now that Guiretti takes command of it. Other drivers to mention, Patrick Niederhauser. Well, we knew he was going to be getting into the number 10 Absolute Racing Porsche. It's Douglas Koo in the Viper Nizza Racing Mercedes. We have Bob Juan in the Origin Motorsport Porsche, Kobe de Bruyke for Ajith Redant Racing, that Mercedes number 93 driven by the Belgian. Dominic Schwager's going to be in the Ferrari from LM Corsa, number 60. And it's Hampus Eriksson, Marcus's brother, for Lippert Motorsport, Lamborghini, number 63.
Yeah, Dominic Schwager, it's good to see him back. He's had about 4 years out of racing. I was going through his career. I thought, well, I haven't seen him in recent years. And you go, oh, my brain isn't playing tricks. You know, he was racing up until did the Le Mans Cup 2020, 2021. But many years racing out here, many years racing in Japan, racing in Germany. Good to have him back. And, you know, I like it when you get an experienced set of hands. And so certainly for Shigekatsu Wakisaka, who's, you know, in his own time did sort of Super GT and stuff in Japan, and Kei Nakanishi. Wakisaka and Nakanishi spend a lot of time together. But it's great to have him on board to just tell them something else about their Ferrari for LM Corsa.
Cloud cover still is pretty fulsome in certain areas above the Sepang International Circuit. And John Hindhoff is in the pit lane for us.
Watching a very deliberately timed getaway from the 909 Red Camel Jordan car, but they've forgotten to do up the right front Michelin on its centre lock wheel. But it was absolutely clear to me that they were just waiting to see if the sun was going to go in behind the clouds. It's by no means thick cloud, but there are pockets of slightly darker cloud, and there's a little bit of a film over the sun generally as well. I think this is really smart timing, notwithstanding that little snafu on the front right of that Porsche, the bright orange car. A couple of other cars have gone out as well, being the Be Quick Absolute Racing Porsche and looked like one of the AMGs as well from slightly further down the pit lane. All waiting for that, just that moment when perhaps there'll be slightly less heat in the surface of the track.
Still running without 2 of the cars in the entry for reasons already explained. So we don't have the Continental Racing by Simpson Motorsport Audi competing in qualifying. Herbert Motorsport are tracking an electrical problem and trying to solve that in time for night practice. So we're not going to see the 91 Porsche in qualifying, but that's, you know it, Herbert Motorsport are going to be in the shake-up for the race tomorrow. Again, on the ragged edge is the number 10 Porsche, and it's not Luke Hartog anymore. Patrick Niederhauser taking over, as Luke described to John, but very similar body language from this dark blue car.
Kobe de Bruyke for the number 93 Ajith Redant Racing Mercedes had just put that car all the way up to top position on average, but the lap has been taken away, which I presume can only be track limits, as Patrick Niederhauser does a 2:03.6. That blows out the water, the fastest time we've seen of the day.
Okay, the reason there was a sudden change at the top, because they were aggregating the 3 sessions and they just had the out lap for all of the drivers in the 3rd session. The first of the flying laps came through, and that certainly changed things around. But once they've all got a flying lap in, then we can give you a true sort of combination of all 3 sessions, but, well, only the first part of Q3. And as we saw, if we have a stoppage, we'll have the tyres losing temperature in the pits, coming back up for an attack, as we saw from Luke Hartog.
Niederhauser's lap's been cut as well.
Yeah.
It was pretty quick. 2:03.684 his last lap, but it is not showing us counting on our timing screen. So track limits police are in sprightly mood today.
Yeah. So we've had a lap taken away for the 93 car, Kobe de Bruyke. That's the one you've mentioned, isn't it? Also, 87, Bob Yuan in the Origin Motorsport Porsche has a lap time deleted. And now the number 10 car is put there officially. So we'd spotted that the time had been deleted, but it takes a few seconds before the message from race control appears on our screens.
Douglas Cole puts the Viper Nizza Racing team to the top. What a story this could be for a local team here in Malaysia. They've been bringing a whole Malaysian team over for the whole European season of the Michelin 24-hour series. A great addition to the championship this year. And for them, imagine to put on pole. And remember, they are an all-AM lineup. Yes. And there is no advantage in terms of an AM car having a wider restrictor than a pro car anymore. It's as the same. So this is, and in qualifying, you don't get any allowances you do in the race with the refueling effect. but that is fantastic. But they've just been blown out by Bo Johan with Origin Motorsport, who then puts that Porsche to the top as Kobe de Broeker puts the Ajith Red Ant Racing car up to second. Schweger brings the LM Corsa Ferrari up to third. So that Stuttgart 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has been smashed apart.
Yeah, just remember what we've been saying with these Michelin tyres, they seem to have one lap, and if you can absolutely nail it, you're laughing. But if on that lap you've had track limits, you're going to lose the lap, and we've seen that far more in the third of the sessions than we have before. Let's talk a little bit about the 992 Porsche class. It's still it's Bailey Hall, Australian race at top of the pile in the moment, 6th position overall, but it's very, very close in class. Well, we've got another 7.5 minutes and see how it can keep on changing. But for now, bragging rights to Mulner Motorsport with their number 91 in the traditional blue-white livery of the team.
Rick Broikers, though, aboard the Red Camel Jordan's car, personal best in Sector 1 at the moment. I would imagine that Red Camel Jordan's car will be in the fight for the podium. We've seen all year battles between Mulner Motorsport and Red Camel Jordan's, which have been really tantalising to watch.
You know, weirdly, what I'm thinking, this session, it feels so the track's a little bit slower. I know we've had a few teams losing their best lap, and perhaps it is the one sweet lap that they're going to achieve. And maybe because of that, the times were there, they've been taken away. But at the moment, we're sitting still with Origin Racing, Origin Motorsport at the top with their Porsche with an aggregate of 2 minutes 4.9 seconds. I expect faster than that overall.
So that little interruption halfway, more or less, is Goretti, but puts the Be Quick car up to 4th for Absolute Racing Porsche, but immediately usurped by Tanart Sati and Tirakul for Climax Racing. Mercedes AMG to the top then. It's changing all the time with 6 minutes and 23 seconds to go.
And it's changing on the averages, not just the times within this session. So the times are so pivotal in this session in isolation, but then when you take the 203.8 that Alessandro Giretti's just set, the 204.3 that Tanat Satin Terakul's just set, that's then having an impact on the grid positions overall, and we don't always get that. You think back to this qualifying format in previous races in 2025 and before that as well. Patrick Niederhaus has just crossed the line with a 203.893, and that jumps the Absolute Racing car back to the front row to join Climax Racing's Mercedes.
And only 0.02 of a second on the aggregate separates Climax Racing on pole to Absolute Racing in second place. So Patrick Niederhauser needs to somehow try and find a little bit of lap time. Or does he be sensible? Does he do his homework on the Friday night to benefit for the rest of the weekend? Or does he cram it all on the Sunday night? What do I mean by that? Is it worth trying to kill that tyre, going for another couple of tens to be on a different side of the front row? Or do you think, actually, no, that's enough, we're on the front row as things stand, come in and park it and keep those tyres in good condition?
There's no rule, I suppose, as to how long you have to have this set of tyres on the car in the race tomorrow. So if you can choose a shortish stint, but it would have to rely on maybe some code 60s here and there. Leave them, well, you wouldn't leave them to the end of the race. You want possibly your best set of tyres for that final stint. So it's an intriguing regulation, and I can see why they thought it was a good idea at the 24H series and within Creventic, who promote the series. The increase to the maximum drive time of 2.5 hours is an awkward number, considering GT3s can do about an hour. So that doesn't fit necessarily in the fuel mileage of each of the cars. And then this rule where you have to use 3 sets of tyres across the 3 different qualifying sessions, and then they need to be re-put on the car for all of the race stints.
You know how often we talk about factory drivers, how they're plug and play, and how they're all covered by such small margins? Well, Patrick Niederhauser, Porsche contracted driver, Porsche 992 GT3R. 203.893. Alessandro Goretti, new signing, Porsche contracted driver, 203.896, 0.03 of a second on a lap of over 2 minutes. That is how tight the margins are between these top guys.
Absolutely phenomenal performance, and Patrick Niederhauser still with 3 minutes and 50 seconds to go. He's expected to cross the line, in fact, at any moment, but he may well have chosen to bring the car in instead. This is the number 10 Absolute Racing car. The Lamborghini is game for another lap, so that shoots across the line right in front of us. The Lippert Motorsport number 63 car also entered into the GT3 category with the all Swedish lineup.
And Rick Breukers has launched the Red Camel Jordan's car right up onto pole position by 49 thousandths of a second over Mulliner Motorsport. That is going to be a real treat between those two cars battling away tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's in the 992 division, and it's a 50-50 split of 992 in brackets Pro and 992 AM cars. The AM cars are the 610 Racing and the Modena Motorsport entries, the treble 6 and 216.
You're wondering if Patrick Niederhauser would go round again? No, because he's in the penalty box. I could just look down from the commentary position. P-E-N are the letters flashing up on his windscreen strip. Now the penalty is served. Actually, he's just climbing out because what's left on the clock? 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Not enough time to go down the pit lane at 40 kph. Get back on the track and set a flying lap, another flying lap. So, as we said, it's 17 thousandths of a second between the Mercedes for Climax Racing with Tanat Satin-Tirakel, the Thai driver at the wheel, and Absolute Racing's Porsche tucked in behind. But I don't know where the quick times are going to come from. Are we going to have some more track limit problems? We certainly had a flurry of them at the start of this, the third qualifying session.
We did, and I think
had a flurry of them at the start of this, the third qualifying session.
We did, and I think we're just about up to date with those. Patrick Niederhauser is now quickest in the session with a 203.893, despite pitting to serve a penalty, or maybe he and the team had chosen that was the right time to get out of the session anyway, being quickest within it. Alessandro Ghiretti, though, almost equaling his time. As you said, just 3 thousandths of a second, PMAC, between the two of them. So Porsche first and second, but on the average times, it's a Mercedes and Climax Racing fastest so far. Tanat Satin-Tirakel kind of backed off a little bit going into turn 15, but chose not to pit. That was just to give him a bit more racing room in comparison to the cars that he'd found within the session. There were about 4 all circulating together down the Penang Straight and then the main start-finish straight known as the Kuala Lumpur Straight, and down towards that shell-type sequence of corners 1 and 2.
Bragging rights in the Ericsson house are going the way of younger brother Hampus, because they've just got, you know, fresh tyres straight out, albeit Hampus will have a few kilos lighter in terms of fuel load, but not an enormous difference. Marcus did a 206.090, whereas Hampus has just done a 205.987, so he's about a tenth quicker. But that tenth matters when you're sitting over dinner. I wonder who's paying for dinner tonight then. Who was?
Well, it's all on that, surely.
Yeah, it must be. It must be. But then, the thing is, Bruce, you work a lot with the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. How important is that platform if you're quick in the Super Trofeo car to step up to the GT3?
They're different.
Okay.
They go about things differently. You know, externally look remarkably similar, but we see this in various series, you know, particularly circuits with a long straight, like for the Dubai 24 Hours, in a straight line, Super Trofeo cars. They're less draggy. They're faster down the straights, not quite so quick through the corners. So it's a bit of give and take, but, you know, he's certainly gained a huge amount of experience.
Closer than an Indy car, though, I guess.
One guesses so, yeah.
7, 6, 5 seconds to go now, and that means that Douglas Coe in the Vipanitsa Mercedes is able to squeeze one more lap out of it. Question is it actually really going to be any value to the Malaysian racer? They've been having a very good run of things across all 3 sessions, considering each driver is an AM in that car, but the consistency across all 3 has been very impressive. Dominic Ang and Melvin Moe, the other drivers within number 65. Checkered flag waving, and we can head to John Hindhaugh,
who I am down in Climax Racing, and there was a quite subdued little bit of congratulations.
Thank you.
Elias, well done. Sapanen, congratulations. It's a 12-hour race. Some people might say, what does pole matter? The people who say what does pole matter aren't on pole position. You guys are. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. As you said, it's a long race, 12 hours. A lot can happen. So, but you know, pole position is the best place you want to start the race from. So, it's a lot of tough competition, but of course we give our best and qualifying good start. The car is feeling good. Did a good improvements throughout the last 2 days. So. Very confident for the race.
This is a track that quite clearly demands a car that has a good balance, because there's a nice mixture of fast sweeping corners. There's some very slow corners as well. Do you take the hairpin in first or second?
Yeah, we driving with the AMG on the second because our gear ratio suits that better. And yeah, as you said, there's a lot of different kind of corners, so actually not so easy to set up the car here because you want good aero for the high speed, but also there's a lot of straight, so you don't want to still cost too much straight performance. So difficult track, but also makes it really fun for the drivers as well.
There's a session tonight in the darkness, and the last 3 hours of the race tomorrow will be in the darkness. We often say when we're at Sebring, you've got to have a car that's good in the dark. You almost have to sacrifice the daytime performance to be good in those last 3 hours?
Here necessarily not, because also when it gets dark, the temperature drop a lot, so it improves the grip as well very nicely. So, and as well here, the dark is relatively easy because the lights are around the track, so we don't even need to run endurance lights on the car. So, but yeah, it will make the race interesting. Also, the weather looks very exciting for the race, so here in Sepang can do whatever so with the weather. So yeah, will be very exciting 12 hours.
Congratulations so far. Headlines for today, all the big work to do tonight and tomorrow. Climax Racing then on pole position for the inaugural Michelin 12 Hours of Sepang.
A big name within the ADAC GT Masters, having won that title on the bounce twice, 2023 and 2024, with Tom Callender, and the year before that, Salman Ovega. Less used to these longer distance runs, so it's going to be exciting to see how the Finn gets on when he's joined by a couple of extra drivers within his car. But they've done job number one in taking pole position, Climax Racing. Tanat Satyenterakul helping towards that cause as well with his 2 minutes 4.372. So we can run you through the positions on the grid. These are all based on average lap times, remember, from 3 individual times. There were 2 cars that weren't able to compete, they being the 69 Continental Racing by Simpson Motorsport Audi and the Herbert Motorsport Porsche. We keep our fingers crossed that we do see a little bit from them today, ideally, during night practice, if not the race tomorrow. But it is China and Hong Kong actually dominating in terms of the running of the teams. Climax, Absolute and Origin, all relatively local to Malaysia. And it's a Mercedes leading a Porsche with Tanat Satyenterakul and Elias Sepanan that we've just heard from, joined in the treble 9 car with other drivers, Li Chao and Mike Zhou, who was part of the qualifying effort. They did a 2:04.556 combined, quicker than the Absolute Racing Porsche, 2:04.573. Then the 2:04.8 combination for Origin Motorsport with their all-Chinese driving lineup. Alessandro Giretti did his level best to get the number 26 Porsche towards the sharp end. It'll be a 4th place start for the win here. Be Quick Absolute Racing car. Ajit Red Ant Racing in the Mercedes for Kobe de Bruyke latterly, number 93, 5th quickest, ahead of the all-Malaysian driver lineup for Viper Racing. It might have been even better for them, but they will start from 6th place. Then Dominic Schwager helped the LM Corsa Ferrari to 7th place, ahead of the Leipzig Motorsport Lamborghini. They are all GT3s and a combination of Pro-Am and Am lineups. Then all 4 992 Porsches within the 992 class find one another in the central part of the grid. 909 Red Camel Jordans.nl quickest. Might have been able to guess that actually, but not that far away. The team from Belgium, just up the road from Spa-Francorchamps, Mulner Motorsport, and Bailey Hall, the young talent from Australia, finishing things off in 921. So they'll start second in 992, ahead of the 2 Am entries of 610 Racing, the treble 6 car, pole position in 992. Am and Modena Motorsports 216, also of course a Porsche. The GT4 pole taken by the Cherney Motorsport BMW. Bryce Fullwood was in that towards the closing stages in qualifying 3. It was a lively trio of sessions actually for the Vortex V8 car number 701, but they did get a time from Philippe Bonnell late on, and that car will start from pole on GTX, ahead of the TCE entry, the Cupra from As Best Racing. So being wheeled down the start-finish line is the Climax car, but we can remind you of precisely what has happened over the last 45 minutes of running, the best part of an hour of track action here at the Petronas Sepang International Circuit. And certainly the Vortex was in the thick of the action early on. Lionel Amrouche with a half spin coming out of the final corner. and then a red flag in the middle sector to recover the same car from the gravel trap at Sunway Lagoon corner. But once we got back underway, there was no time to lose with the clock stopped at 6 minutes. Qualifying 3 ran without a hitch. And that is therefore qualifying sorted. We now look ahead to the race action tomorrow with the full build-up ahead of a 10 o'clock local time start. And we are racing for 12 hours. And as John has mentioned, the final 3 hours of the race tomorrow will be in darkness, although with a fair bit of flood lighting, particularly on the back straight and the start-finish straight. But a real treat to be here. The first ever Far Eastern race as part of the 24-hour series, the inaugural 12 Hours of Malaysia. And we will have it all for you live, including a grid walk tomorrow to kick things off tomorrow morning. Saturday race, and you can join Bruce Jones, Peter Mackay, John Hindhoff and me, Johnny Palmer, and Ben Constanduras for the full race live throughout the day tomorrow. We'll see you for that. Bye for now.
TCR car out there, and as I said earlier on, JP, some slight changes to particularly the Cord 60 fuel fill from what we've seen in the past here in Creventic.
Yeah, there's certainly some changes within the rule set from 2025 into this new season. It seems strange that because we're still in December of 25, but the new Middle East Trophy season begins with this event, the inaugural Michelin 12 Hours of Malaysia, and you certainly have to be on point in terms of the balance of performance for fueling. John mentioned about the smart meters, the fuel pumps, and that is dependent on which class you are in. You have a special key device. It sort of reads which car you have, which class you are in, and then determines the fuel flow and how much you can put into the car at any one point. And that's whether it's under green or code 60. So very clever stuff, whereas in the past it was down to your team members having to dictate it all, and there was mistakes aplenty. Theoretically it's easier now because the electronical system will do it all for you.
Let's say I've been coming to 24H series races for about a dozen years. What always impresses me, there is a constant evolution of the rules, and They really consider things and how would it work with this, how would it work with that, and then it gets introduced, and if it doesn't work, they will step back and change it again. But I think they're just getting to a sweeter and sweet spot. But if I can go back to a point I wanted to make just before we went to John, we heard that these tyres are very peaky. You get effectively the one good flying lap. But to me, the element I need to understand is how big is the fall down. Does it just come down and then stay really constant? Because it's a thing. If you've got to get your tyres to work for an hour or whatever, if it carries on falling away at a rapid rate, you're in big trouble. But that's what we need to. So the more drivers we can speak to, they'll be able to sort of pass on the degree of drop-off from the very peak.
Well, that's something we've seen with the Michelin tyre throughout the year, is that when the conditions haven't been as warm anyway as we've got here, there is a drop-off, and then it can stay there for a long time. Dominic Ang, a local driver here, knows the circuit inside out, and talking a lot about how the track conditions change, how 10 degrees Celsius higher track temperature, and how that's making the car slide more, how it's putting more temperature obviously through the tyres. So that I agree with you, Bruce. That's something the drivers are going to give us great feedback tomorrow down in the pits with John and Ben having a
Slate
chat.
today, slate tomorrow. Next phase. Next is now.
உங்க டாய்லெட் கிளீனர் பைசன் டாய்லெட் கிளீனர் குவாலிட்டியை விட பெட்டர்னு நிரூபிச்சா உங்க மொத்த பணமும் ரீஃபண்ட்.
இப்போது 79 ரூபாயில்.
ஆஹா, நோ காம்ப்ரமைஸ். உங்க சைடுலயும் எங்க சைடுலயும்.
GT Holidays, South India's #1 travel brand.